Okay, tell the truth. Are you spending too much time on social media creating content because that's what you're supposed to do, but you're just not seeing the clients come in the door? You need Post with Purpose, our social media membership site made just for estheticians and spa owners that will help you get crystal clear on what to say and when, and teach you our content creation system that'll have you knocking out a month's worth of content, yes, a month, in just a couple of hours. Sound good? Check out our $7 for 7-day trial and take back your time today. Hello, my dears. Daniela here, and welcome to another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. Now, I want to begin by sharing that this episode is just a little bit out of scope of what we normally talk about here on the podcast. But because I truly believe in building a business around a life you love, which means that your personal and professional life is intertwined, I thought that bringing on award-winning educator LemiOla would provide a massive value to the parents out there. And if you're not a parent, it can give you some perspective to the challenges that many are facing. Now, we've seen a lot of changes in the past year with the pandemic. Many of you are struggling with limited or no childcare and still attempting to run your business, which requires more attention than ever because you're needing to pivot and then pivot and then pivot again. Many of you are trying to lead your team. It's a challenge. We are emotionally and physically exhausted and still expected to play a much more significant role in the education of our children. Now, we all want the best for our children, and I know I'm not alone in sharing that I worry about what the long-term effects will be. I have no doubt that this is the primary driver for why women are leaving the workforce at 4 times the rate of men. I don't know if you guys saw that there was like an NPR story about it, but oh my gosh. Now, I know children are resilient, and trust me when I tell you that I do have an incredibly strong and incredibly positive mindset. I am not trying to be a downer here, but just acknowledge what many people are going through, let you know that I understand, and also try to do my part to share a solution, at least with the education piece. Now, my guest today is an incredibly accomplished woman who started on the path she's on today out of a desire to ensure that her children had the best education possible. As I mentioned before, her name is Lemi-Ola, and she and I had a wonderful conversation filled with actionable tips around education to help give you peace of mind when it comes to your child's learning. Let me read her bio and then we'll jump into the interview, but make sure that you head over to the show notes section. You want to click the link to her website. It's the Critical Thinking Child. She's got some incredible free resources on her website for you to download. Okay, LemiOla is an award-winning educator, parent coach, children's author, and total nerd when it comes to spatial puzzles. Her life work and passion is helping parents nurture their child's learning potential in an engaging and joyful way so kids can fast-track learning, discover their gifts, and reclaim family time. Over the past 15 years, Lemi has helped hundreds of busy moms and dads from all over the world uncover, optimize, and accelerate their child's academic and gifted potential through her organization, the Critical Thinking Child. All right, she's an incredible woman, extremely accomplished. I think you'll love the interview with her, get tons of valuable information. Without further ado, let's go ahead and play that interview. All right, LemiOla, thank you so much for being on the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I'm so excited to have you here to share your story. I think it's going to be just so inspirational to so many women. I love highlighting women who have accomplished incredible things, who are showing up as leaders, because I feel like leadership is just so important and not talked about enough in our industry. So I gave a brief intro in the bio. I read your bio in the intro, but can you just give, in your own words, what is your journey? How did you get here? What took you to where you are now?
Oh, wow. First, let me just say thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here inside of your podcasting space. And I guess my backstory sort of goes back like decades. But I want to start by just saying the journey began as a parent, really, just as a mom. I've always envisioned what education would look like even before I had children, walking them to school, helping them get on that yellow school bus. And when I did have children, it just was a total paradigm sort of shock to me, right? And so
I'm in it right now.
which
I'm
is
in shock right now.
I imagine a lot of moms and parents are, because of the pandemic and everything that's going on in the restructuring of our education system. But for me, I worked 25 years in corporate America. So as a working mom, and also when I first had my son, I felt that as long as I continued to read and buy books and all kinds of cool gadgets, he would be on track for kindergarten. And we can get him into some of the best elementary schools in the city in which I live. And so I thought really that I was very naive. I thought it was going to be, just really easy. I found out that the process was a total nightmare. It involved him testing with a psychologist. It involved him not only being able to read, but then also do mathematical reasoning. And I felt I was doing all the right things in the very beginning. And then I discovered after the fact that I was off track and that there was a whole slew of targets and developmental milestones that I was not even aware of. And I felt at that point, my son is 4 years old, and I felt like a failure. So it brought me to tears. And when the results came back, he was just slightly above average, but not high enough to get into these wonderful, highly accelerated schools that were feeder schools into some of the best high schools in the country, et cetera. And then eventually colleges. And that was the pathway I wanted for him.
Can I just stop you there real quick? Because I know that we hear, like, for schooling, I'm from Hawaii and or my family's been in Hawaii for 20 years. I was born in California, but when in Hawaii, there's not like the whole preschool thing, or at least I wasn't aware of it. And when I came to the mainland and DC in particular, when I had children here, it's like kids are on, when you get pregnant, you're on the waiting list to get into the preschool. And there's like, it's such a long thing. And kids start school at 2. And they say that is like the most important, like, developmental time. Absolutely. I had no idea of any of this. Is this all like, oh yeah, common knowledge for moms? Or like, that was what made me feel like a failure, because I was like, are we supposed to be putting our kids in school at age 2? Are we supposed to like know all of this stuff? And when you're juggling being a working parent, right? Like it's like being a parent really is a full-time job.
Oh, absolutely. It's a full-time job and a half. And I would say yes and no. If you're lucky enough to maybe be connected with a teacher or an educator or someone in that space that can share knowledge with you, you're probably ahead of the game. But if you're not, and probably the vast majority of parents are not, because they're, they may not be teachers, they may be working in a different industry. And so it becomes sort of a shock to know that we should be starting early. And the difference that it makes when you have the right tools in place and when you do start early can make a difference between that child starting behind by 1 year or 2 years, starting on grade level, or being a grade level or 2 above. So, when they step into the classroom or step into some of the, depending if they're starting kindergarten or even middle school, there are certain targets that they should be meeting. And many of the reporting systems that parents get, let's take the report card, for example, they may just see a letter grade or, some type of letter identification that says that the child is passing or doing satisfactory. And we may get happy about that. I know I did. But then I later discovered that there were holes and gaps in my children's learning that were obviously becoming very apparent to me. And I wanted to do something about it.
Is that because of different learning styles? Like we know, like the Montessori method, we know, there's all these different, is that because of that? Or are the gaps from just not proper exposure to the way that kids, just not early enough exposure to the way that they're supposed to learn?
I think the gaps are lack of knowledge, probably too much information that's out there. Many parents are just, quite frankly, overwhelmed with the options and the choices. When we think back to, March of 2020, when the pandemic hit and the school closures happened, and parents found themselves in, the awkward situation of now being, the supervisor of remote learning or virtual learning or homeschooling for that matter. And they weren't prepared. It's like, when they started Googling, it's so much information out there that they begin to have decision fatigue, and then it's like, what path do I take? And I don't want to mess up. Is what many of the parents I work with. So they don't take action, or they, just put it in the hands of someone who can. But their gut tells them that they're not really comfortable with that approach. What I found is that I had to really follow the research. So a lot of the methods and strategies that we share with parents are research-based. And many of the research is geared in, an academic language that's not really, I would say, user-friendly for parents to interpret and really understand. It's like what I call teacher talk. And so even though the information may be out there, it may not be easily digestible or easy enough to comprehend, and then take that information and then start executing.
So your business now, you had some pivots as the pandemic happened, and you're providing a service now that tremendously helps parents that are dealing with their homeschooling with no childcare. I mean, our whole world has just changed in such a huge way. And something that is just like, so I can't even express how I feel about it, because it makes me so angry, so sad, so many different emotions, is that women are leaving the workforce at 4 times the rate of men. And, when you talk about women's entrepreneurship, women's leadership, I look at you, right? You've had this incredible career. When you were telling me your background and what you accomplished in healthcare and the roles that you played and the people that you managed and all of these types of things, we need women in leadership roles in businesses. We need women in leadership roles in entrepreneurship, in all of these spaces. And we also, as women, tend to be the primary caregivers of children and in the family. And so when we're already taking on so much, and this pandemic hit, and so many women said, I don't even have time for myself before, and now I've got to homeschool my kids. So there goes my business, or there goes, I've just got to stop. I think that's going to take me a little while to process, because I think that we have not seen the effects of what that will do with so many women leaving the workforce. And that's why I was so impressed with your company, because you provide this really like such a helping hand for these individuals, these women and men. I'm sure there's plenty of men who are dads that are there helping and doing whatever they can to support their kids. Like, I don't want to discount any of them, because I know there's a lot of awesome dads out there, but to see 4 times the rate leaving the workforce, and also like, I wonder, how is this education, this shift in education, with parents doing their best, but also not knowing how to be teachers and not knowing the language, how will that affect our kids? 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, like what impact will that have? And so that was, when I heard about your company, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like such an important piece of information to share. So do you want to just tell a little bit like how your company originally started and how you guys kind of pivoted during the pandemic and how you're helping parents educate their children?
Absolutely. It started off as, me just being a curious mom and helping my own children. And then it extended to the community in the neighborhood in which I live. And I started doing private tutoring sessions. We had such a high success rate in the method that I put together based on the research. It's actually called the Smart Start system. And that formula just allowed parents to really support their child in reaching their academic potential. So we saw struggling students who, maybe they were C or D students. All of a sudden, they were now A students, and they had lots of confidence, and they were excited about learning. They found what they were good at, and they were passionate about it, and they had a growth mindset. And so extending that into the community, it was the parents in the community that said, we want you to take this further and we will support you. I never really thought about it as, being an entrepreneur at that moment. I just felt about, how can I help? And that was 10 years ago. And it just really blossomed by focusing on, how can we help? Like if you go to the website, that's the first thing we're talking about. We want to be able to help parents navigate this process. We've already been through the humps and the obstacles, and we have found the tunnel to, the pathway where they can accelerate learning, help their child think better, develop critical thinking and problem solving skills, get good at math, all those things we wish, for parents. And so over time, I felt that I needed to put this platform online. Mm-hmm. So we went from in-person delivery, just really, we call them critical thinking boot camps. And it was just beautiful because the smaller kids as young as 4 would be able to come on a college campus, and we would work with the parents. It was like the parents coming to school and the children at the same time. Everybody was learning from pre-K all the way to 8th grade. And we were bringing in some of the strategies that were sort of buried in the research, but had proven to be a key component in academic success. When the pandemic hit, naturally, all of that stopped, right? All work stopped for us.
Work stopped, but probably the need was so much greater.
Yeah. Definitely in person. I should say in person, because we were working with the school districts. We had private clients. We were really growing our business and our brand and everything. And so, as the CEO, I could have just, threw in the towel and just said, there's no way to do tutoring. But we were always staying at the forefront of education. And so we had started Zoom tutoring 2 to 3 years ago. So we were comfortable with the platform. And so we initially pivoted and started working with the schools, started, talking to parents. How can we help you? We can do this online and you can still get the same results. Mm-hmm. So immediately we had, hundreds of students sign up. We started offering parents virtual workshops so that they can understand what's going on, so that they can understand that learning looks different now. And this is going to be the case going forward. When you talked about what are the effects of this pandemic, it has totally shifted education in a way that no one alive has really seen, for that matter. So suffice it to say that we're all sort of learning something new. But remote learning is pretty much here to stay. And it's going to be our new normal, especially with the way technology is flourishing. And so the recommendation is we want to be able to inform parents on what good teaching looks like in a remote setting, in the virtual learning pod setting, even in a hybrid setting. If they're going to school 2 days a week, and then they're doing sort of a blend of, what is it called? Asynchronous type of learning and synchronous type of learning, like sort of a hybrid, right? We want them to know what it looks like to have good learning.
When you say that virtual learning is here to stay, where does that put, like, so much of school also, I think for children is learning how to interact with each other, learning the social interactions, the body language, the learning how to share, learning how to have friends and all of those types of things. How does that come into play in the virtual world?
Well, I'll be quite honest. I don't think there's any substitute for that. There's no technology that can substitute the human touch. Just like there's nothing that can replace the love from a parent or a mother or father, right? So we're going to have sort of a hybrid approach to that and really take advantage of, our social interactions, be very intentional about play dates, be very intentional about, birthday parties and family get-togethers. They may not be as large as we had maybe dreamed or how it was when we were celebrating, our 5th birthday, as we can remember our 10th birthday or Sweet 16. But what I have found is that sometimes the kids will have selective memory. Like as parents, we do so much. We have to cook, clean, we have to supervise their learning, we have to work. And even if you're coming out of the, workforce, and there's still tons of work to do every single day. It doesn't mean that your time is free because you're not working for corporate America, right?
Right.
So it's easy to get overwhelmed before noon. And so one of the things that I would highly recommend is definitely take evidence of the love and the compassion and the time that you're spending with your children, those special moments, because you don't want them to be lost. And by taking evidence of that, that means really capturing that through photographs, doing journal writing, so that they can flip back and have sort of a treasure of the history and all of the devotion that you have given them. Because it's real easy to forget. 5 years from now, if you have a child that's 5 and then maybe when they're 10, they may not exactly remember that you had to stay home and help them navigate and help them with the work and really the sacrifices that you made to do that. And so putting together the academic profile, their achievement, making the grade, and you can actually, orchestrate this just by, having different incentives in the household. And just documenting it is going to be critically important.
For the kid and for yourself, I think also.
Oh, yeah. Looking back at that, I flip back. My children now are, 20 and 21. And what we did this past holiday is sort of go through the photographs, go through the binders of their perfect attendance and their ribbon. And it really meant a lot to them. They were, very thankful. And so I'm telling parents, you may not be getting all the thank yous that you deserve right now, but know that they are really thankful within their hearts, the children are, and that they will be thanking you later.
So what advice do you have? You spoke about being overwhelmed before noon, which I think is something that's very common. And, our audience is spa owners, they're entrepreneurs, most of them, right? So these are working women and men, but mostly women to our listeners. For someone, that you had this incredible career, you've been, a working mom and had these 2 kids that you raised. What advice do you give to women who are in this situation now that they're just trying to juggle? What can they do if they don't want to give up their business, but they still want to be there for their kids? Like, how can you navigate that and still be balanced? And I don't know if you have the answer. I don't think anybody truly has the full answer, but
well, first I can say is that when we look at the traditional education sort of blueprint here in the United States, if we were to examine that, we can actually see that students can learn in half the time. like the amount of content can actually be abbreviated. So as a parent, knowing that should give you some type of relief, because you don't need the full 8 hours of learning or 6 hours, whatever the structure was, to make sure that your child is academically on track or being fulfilled. So you can do it in half the time. You just need the roadmap. You just need to understand what the targets are. And I have to say, without understanding those targets, we're really just, going through the tunnel without any light. Those targets become the flashlight and the window of opportunity for us to know, when our child is learning, what we can do to support him or her. So as an entrepreneur and a working mom, you have to have balance and know that you don't need as much time as they're telling you, for one. You can actually, accomplish a lot in less time. So, for example, I had a parent consultation today, and she basically mentioned that she wanted to support her child's, reading level. She saw some other kids that were younger than her child, and it amazed her that they were 3 years old and they were already reading, and her child is 5 and not reading as strongly. And she's working and she's trying to find the time. And I told her that there are times within the day that you're probably not aware of that you can, infuse learning. For example, when your child is brushing their teeth, you have to look at things that they're doing sort of on a ritual basis, right? So if they have certain rituals, and I know most parents put, habits in place, good habits in place. So just even when they get up to wash up, brush their teeth, you can, in the bathroom, in that vanity mirror, you can start to put 5 or 6 sight words, vocabulary words, and change them up every 2 to 3 days, and then help them read those words. Sooner rather than later, you'll find that their vocabulary will begin to build. It'll become more robust. We talk about starting with sight words. And for those who don't know what I mean by sight words, those are the DOLCH, DOLCH. It's 220 sight words. And the research has found that if we have students learn these sight words between pre-K and kindergarten, or pre-K and third grade rather, that they're more likely to be, avid readers and be successful in reading when they learn those sight words. Oftentimes, parents are not aware that there are these 220 sight words that they can focus on and move their child ahead. The other thing is the 44 phonetic sounds. There are 44 phonetic sounds. I didn't know that at first. I had to learn that. But once I did, I was able to empower myself and also my children by teaching in such a way that was going to accelerate their learning. And so I would say, you can't do it alone. Do not try to do it alone. It'll be too overwhelming. And there's so much that you don't know that when you do find out about it, you'll be able to instruct your child in a more creative, a more engaging, entertaining way than any other teacher could ever do for your child. You are sort of the optimum, extraordinary teacher for your child. You just need the tools. So getting a coach like, what we do for parents at the Critical Thinking Child is we, take the blinders off and we share with you what the targets are. We share the learning tools, the selection of resources, the workbooks. We do all the heavy lifting for you so that you don't have to waste your time reinventing the wheel, searching on Google for hours, trying to figure out, is it this homeschooling curriculum or which one is the best, when in fact, if you ask a homeschooler, they'll tell you that they're using a combination of different tools, right? They're just not using one curriculum. And it's not about the curriculum. It's not about the curriculum. It's about, how you're teaching the child, like to their learning style, and making sure that, they learn from their mistakes and that they think outside the box instead of memorizing everything, right? Because we want sustained learning. And one of the downfalls is that as parents, I know for myself that we were told, get them the flashcards, have them memorize, the alphabet, memorize the multiplication tables, memorize, 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 and then they would, get the A and make the grade. But that only pretty much that technology or that, I should say, that approach works to up into third grade. So memorization, for what I have seen in the research, works up into third grade. And then, you can take a smart child who's had a lot of confidence and has been praised for memorization. And when they get to fourth grade, they feel like a failure because they don't have sustained learning. And just in the example of reading, from kindergarten to third grade, we are teaching them the skills to learn how to read. But then in fourth grade, we switch it to read to learn. So there's different milestones in targets that parents need to be aware of as they're working at home with their children. So they shouldn't do it alone. They should reach out for support, and they should ask, how can I know where my child is? How can I track my child's progress right here, right now? Before I buy any tool, before I hire a tutor, I need to know what he or she knows and what he doesn't. And so starting off with an assessment or an evaluation will open the eyes of a parent. And we're not just talking about giving a grade like A or B. You really need to unwrap the learning targets. So with reading, we're talking about phonics skills. We're talking about the sight words. We are talking about reading strategies such as fluency. Like, I didn't know if many parents knew. I mean, this was a big revelation to me, that the 5-word rule, that in order to just do a light assessment, and parents can try this at home, you can have your child read a sentence. And if you find that they're missing more than 1 in 5 words within a sentence, their comprehension is significantly decreasing. Mm. Because if you have a child struggling with more words than necessary, their brain is not able to comprehend the meaning of the words because they're trying to make out the sounds of the words. Mm. So comprehension has a lot to do with like fluency and phonetic strategy. And so once we've seen it time and time again, we'll take a reader who, the parent may come in and say, my child is not a confident reader. He's struggling. He doesn't like reading at all. We'll do an assessment and we'll find that they're not reading at a current pace. Like they don't know how fast or how slow to go, or they have forgotten the sounds of the vowels, which is the key to English, right? So maybe they learned it, but then they didn't get a refresher, or maybe they didn't get enough exposure to it. I always tell parents, you want to give at least 3 years of, refresher on the 44 sounds. And then from there, you'll see that, you have an independent, avid reader. But many parents
so much going on in my brain right now. I'm like, oh my gosh. I know that I know this is a little different subject than we typically talk about on this podcast, but I think it's so important because so many of the women that listen are moms. And if you're worried about your kid, our kids come first, right? And if you're worried about your kid, you're not going to be able to follow your dreams in business. But when you're talking about the phonetics, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my daughter says lelo instead of yellow. She cannot say it's lelo, but she says wise with everything else. And I'm like, okay, I got to do the assessment. Got to do the assessment. But I think
the assessment will tell you what you're doing right.
But it's also, I think it's peace of mind. She's 3, that's totally normal. Or, exactly. It's, you know what I mean? It gives you that peace of mind that kids learn, because my kid is bilingual. And so they say that bilingual kids are 6 months behind in language because they're learning if they're spoken both languages from the time they're born, it takes them a little bit longer. So but all of it, I mean, especially if you are a first-time parent in this pandemic, or if you're like, you don't have other kids to compare to, you have no idea what's normal, right? And so I think it's just such an incredible tool to be able to have these assessments, to be able to have access to the research, because what better peace of mind than to know, okay, my kids are okay. Like, we've got this, we've got the strength, we can show up for them, we can show up in our businesses, we can totally make this work.
Right. And that's how you show up, because it's just like business. You got to get a plan, right? We don't want to just shoot in the dark with our business. So we want a roadmap. We want to do a SWOT analysis. We want to have all the metrics in place. We want to know how to market it, where to spend our time, our precious time. And so starting off with that assessment gives you, at least the assessments that we do, gives you sort of the lay of the land as to where you need to spend your time. And then for many, entrepreneurs, I would suggest using your business as the best teaching tool. Because, children are always looking up to their parents, whether they're vocal about it or not. They're watching and they're listening. They may not make the direct eye contact, but if they're within an ear's reach, they're watching your movement. They're paying attention. I was surprised by how much my own children knew about my business when I didn't even directly, intentionally, try to teach them about it. But they're like, oh, we've heard you say this for years. You've been doing this for years. And so use your own business as the teaching tool, right? If you have a pamphlet, that's an opportunity to, point out some words. Maybe you take turns, reading a few sentences together. It doesn't have to be anything long. That's the other thing, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Those are wonderful time deposits to make. That's not going to be an energy drain. It doesn't feel like a chore. And they're just going to learn organically. So I would look at the business, even if you're looking at numbers, perhaps. Maybe you can balance your books and then have your child sit alongside you and say, can you help me add this up? How would you go about doing that? And then perhaps maybe they may not get it accurate. And rather than saying, oh, no, that's wrong, that's a moment that a teachable moment for you where you can say, hey, I've got another way that I actually do the addition. Do you want to see it? And chances are they're going to say, yeah, sure, Mom, sure, Dad, show me. And so that's just the beginning of how you want to, be able to approach it. The next time you're doing the books, you may not even need to ask. They'll say, hey, you want some help? I could, sit down and help you. And they will begin to volunteer themselves for the learning without knowing it. That's the best part.
And they're helping you in your business.
Right.
Very good. So let's, where can people find you, follow you, learn about your business, learn about these assessments, all of the things? Where can they stay in touch if they want to reach out to you?
Our website is thecriticalthinkingchild.com. And we are always adding resources and tools. We have a very robust blog on our website. I highly encourage parents to start off with either one or two or both of our freebies. So we have a free quiz for parents who, want to spare 5 minutes and take a short quiz and find out their child's learning style. So that's always available. That's on the front page of the website. In addition, because of COVID-19, we did some extensive research across the country to figure out what the best models are. We put together the ultimate guide for a successful school year. And it just really was sort of a collection of all the juicy resources that I found, as a result of what other educators were doing. So I put it together in this ebook. It's about 35 to 40 pages and it's free. It has a checklist. It has other resources. For example, if we have a parent who's, maybe hiring a tutor or doing virtual learning, and they want to know about what technology to use, what does an ideal learning space look like? There are examples inside of that book, as well as links for parents to click on. So just a chock full of resources. I highly encourage parents to get access to that. And, we're going to try to update that every year to make sure that's definitely a winning strategy. In addition, we have on our website a shop where, and this is new, this is one of the things that I did to be, I'm happy to say, but then also I want to do my part because it's statistics out there basically stated that 42% of small Black-owned businesses failed within the first 3 months of COVID-19. 42%. And I'm like, is that number right? And everywhere I've looked, Forbes, CNN, they're all quoting that high, ridiculous number. And so we are grateful that we are still in business. And one of the things that I immediately did was I took our hard copy tools and we converted them and we created an online store. And so now parents who otherwise maybe couldn't come, to Chicago where we're headquarters can now go online and shop and get some of the digital downloads, some of the workbooks, some of the engaging exercises and activities, and then implement those at home. That along with some of the courses that we have and that we make available.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your resources, sharing your knowledge. This was just such a tremendous value. And I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing because I feel like it's so easy. 2020 was a beast for a lot. It was for a lot of people. Yeah. There's always a silver lining. I pride myself in being able to see the positive in things and look at with what I was saying a few times to some of my students is 2020 gave you that ability to pause and really think about, is this what I want to do? Am I on the right path? Am I going the right direction? But there's also just so much overwhelm of, not only running your business, but now not having childcare and being responsible for the education of your children and what's going on with, depending on the age group, I think there's different challenges that come up with the social aspect. Like my daughter constantly is asking me, when are the germs going to be out of my school? And it's like, how do you explain that? So I think it's just so incredibly valuable to have someone like you with a business, not only a working mom, but also doing the research, having all of these resources. It's just incredibly helpful. And it's going to make, and I'm sure already has made, a huge impact for parents. So go and check it out.
Yeah, we want women to, use their talents and so forth. They're leaving the workforce in record numbers. This is unprecedented. But I'll tell you that when I left corporate America, it wasn't a light switch that went off. I was still on fire about, the skills and what was I going to do next with my time and my talent and my experience. And I'm betting for many of those women, even though they're at home, that there is something that's going to spark within them, that they're going to be able to find something else that they're passionate about or make an extension of what they already love. Mm-hmm. So continue to, follow your heart. You'll find that work and life balance. Just be consistent and, stay true to you.
Well, thank you so much. We've got all the links below this episode. And as always, if you want to keep the conversation going, please head on over to the Spa Marketing Made Easy Facebook group, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.